202 BC, Scipio is waiting for roughly 80 war elephants. The ground moves before the armies do. The Roman line is open, deliberately. Those gaps are not weakness, they are channels. Across the plain, Hannibal watches Rome break its own formation. On Rome's wing rides the cavalry that once carried Hannibal's victories. Scipio is about to turn Hannibal's war against him. 14 years earlier, Rome had no such answer. At Cannae, Hannibal destroyed one of Rome's largest armies. Yet the Senate refused to negotiate. Rome raised legions, demanded more from its allies, and fought on. The survivors went to Sicily, condemned to serve until war's end. Hannibal still held the south, but his army kept shrinking. Rome stopped risking everything on the battle Hannibal wanted.
Deny him battle. Let time fight for Rome.
Every Roman replacement tightened the pressure on Hannibal. After breaking Carthage in Spain, Scipio prepared to invade Africa. At the Metaurus, Hasdrubal was killed before the brothers could unite. The army Hannibal had waited years for was gone. By 203 BC, he was confined to Italy's far south. Scipio proposed a move that could force Hannibal out.
Hannibal is still in Italy. Defend Italy first. Then we take the war to Africa.
Rome stopped chasing Hannibal. Africa would force him to follow. In Sicily, Scipio inspected the disgraced legions man by man. Some had survived Cannae and had never been forgiven. He kept the veterans and filled the gaps around them. Experience would be the frame. New manpower would fill it. They practiced advancing and reforming until movement became discipline. Cannae had produced survivors. Scipio meant to make them soldiers again. An invasion army could not live on courage. Men, horses, weapons, food, and water all had to cross together. Anything lost at sea could not be replaced on the African shore. Laelius would control the fleet. Scipio would command the landing. At Lilybaeum, Rome placed an invasion army onto the sea.
The fleet sailed from western Sicily toward the Carthaginian coast. Fog soon erased every ship beyond the nearest line of oars. For hours, commanders could see only fragments of the fleet. Land appeared, but the fleet had drifted beyond its landing point. Scipio landed near Cape Pulchrum and seized the heights above the shore. The beachhead survived. Now it needed a port. The fleet moved toward Utica, while the army advanced inland. But Utica refused to fall, denying Scipio the harbor he wanted. So Scipio fortified the coast and held the headland instead. Every ration still had to cross the water from Sicily. Outside Utica, Hasdrubal and Syphax assembled another army. During negotiations, Roman observers studied what the camps were built from. Dry reeds, timber, matting. One spark could outrun an army.
Light the camps! Block the exits!
The first torches touched Syphax's camp. Men woke inside walls that had become fuel. When Carthaginian soldiers ran to help, Roman formations were waiting outside. Carthage and Syphax raised another army on the Great Plains. Scipio broke it before Carthage could recover from Utica. Scipio turned toward Tunis. Massinissa and Laelius drove west after Syphax. With Syphax running, Carthage had one army left to call home. At Zama, the elephants still waited. Hannibal's cavalry was already disappearing. Massinissa chased him across a kingdom that had once been his own. Outside Ceuta, Syphax made one last attempt to keep his throne. The king was captured before he could reach the city. When Ceuta saw Syphax in chains, its gates opened. Inside waited Sophonisba, whose marriage had bound Syphax to Carthage. The ancient story says Massinissa sent poison when Scipio demanded her surrender. Meanwhile, a storm drove Roman supply ships into Carthaginian waters. Carthage seized the ships while the truce was still in force. Then Roman envoys were attacked. The truce ended. Carthage now sent one order across the sea. Hannibal must return.
He invaded Italy. Rome's invasion of Africa forced him out. The surviving core of Hannibal's Italian army embarked with him. Behind him lay 15 years of victories and an unfinished war. The direction of the war had reversed. The crossing carried Hannibal from Bruttium to Leptis Minor. Hannibal landed at Leptis Minor, south of Carthage. At Hadrumetum, veterans were joined by mercenaries, African troops, and elephants. Hannibal had an army. He did not yet have one army. From Hadrumetum, Hannibal marched inland. Scipio advanced from the coast. His mixed army moved forward through a series of forced marches. Scipio held the water. Hannibal's men walked farther forward. Before the battle, the two generals met between their armies.
There is still time to spare both armies. The truce was already broken.
Hannibal placed the elephants first, then 3 infantry lines in depth. Scipio answered with open infantry corridors and cavalry on both wings. Hannibal had more infantry. Scipio held the cavalry advantage.
No major obstacle divided the armies. Each could see what approached. Scipio kept Rome's 3 lines. He changed the spaces between them. Hannibal had chosen shock before contact. Behind them, he built a battle of exhaustion. On open ground, Rome's cavalry had room to maneuver.
Send the elephants!
The elephants began moving before the infantry. The elephants were meant to kill and shatter formation.
Keep the corridors open!
The Roman line answered with trumpets, metal, and battle cries. Some panicked before they ever reached the Roman line. Massinissa attacked the confusion immediately. But the main charge kept coming. The Velites struck first, then gave ground. Some animals followed the skirmishers into the empty lanes.
Elephants faced attacks from both sides, but no solid rank ahead. Inside the corridors, damage fell, but the elephants remained lethal. The survivors passed through or fled. The legions still stood. On Rome's right, Massinissa struck the weakened Carthaginian horse. Numidian javelins disrupted their spacing before the horses met. The Carthaginian left gave way. At the same moment, Laelius struck the other flank. Carthage had too few horsemen to hold both wings.
Massinissa and Laelius followed them away from the battlefield. The pursuit removed Hannibal's cavalry. It also removed Scipio's. The next phase belonged entirely to the infantry. Hannibal sent the mercenaries forward. His second line remained still. Scipio answered with the hastati. The missiles broke spacing before swords were drawn. Then, the two lines met. The mercenaries were not disposable rabble. Many were experienced soldiers. At first, their skill drove parts of the hastati backward. Roman order absorbed the shock. Hannibal's spacing had become a trap. The first line fell back and found the road blocked. The second line refused to open. Retreat became a second battle. Scipio forced the pressure forward.
Romans, mercenaries, and Carthaginian infantry collapsed into one fight. The hastati began losing order. The Principes moved forward. When the center cleared, Hannibal's veterans were still waiting.
Stop! Reform the line!
Dead men and discarded weapons formed a barrier between the armies. Wounded Romans went back. The front line was called home. Hastati reformed in the center. Principes extended both sides of the center. Triarii extended the new front even farther. Scipio had turned 3 lines into one. Hannibal released the only line he had kept untouched. These men had spent years defeating Roman armies in Italy. Now they faced Rome without elephants or cavalry. The final phase began as a collision of exhausted infantry. Neither line bent. One more push could still decide the war.
Scipio moved behind the line, forcing its shields back together. Then, dust rose behind Hannibal. The pursuit had ended. The cavalry had returned. They had returned behind infantry that could not disengage. The blow struck a line already locked to its front. Men turned toward the horses and opened gaps to the legions. The army could not fight in 2 directions. Hannibal escaped. Carthage's army collapsed behind him.
Hannibal returned to Hadrumetum with only a small escort. On the plain, the survivors surrendered in thousands. Ancient accounts place the Roman dead near 1,500. They claim roughly 20,000 Carthaginian dead, and as many captured. Scipio seized Hannibal's abandoned camp. Hannibal survived the battle, only to be summoned home again. Scipio now applied the pressure Zama had made possible. One Roman force approached Carthage along the roads. Scipio approached the same city from the sea. Carthage could now see Roman pressure from both directions. Victory was gone. Only Carthage's survival remained.
Accept an answer!
Accept the terms.
Carthage surrendered nearly all of its warships. It surrendered its elephants and could train no more. Only 10 warships could remain. 10,000 tons of silver would be paid over 50 years. Carthage lost territory, while Massiniss's Numidia expanded. Roman permission now controlled Carthage's right to wage war. Carthage survived the peace, but only as a disarmed power. Massinissa emerged as king of a strengthened Numidia. Rome now dominated the western Mediterranean, but Macedon and the Seleucid kingdom still stood in the east. Zama removed the only western power that had matched Rome.
Hannibal later repaired Carthage's finances and made new enemies doing it. Scipio, too, withdrew from public life after political attacks at Rome. The soldiers condemned after Cannae finally returned from Africa. Rome defeated Hannibal because it remembered Cannae and learned